Hello, and welcome back to Gap and Justice, your podcast for anything crime related. We are back after a little break. It has been crazy in our lives, but we are back and ready to do a bunch of stuff. We're actually recording a few podcasts as we speak today, and we are going to try to keep up with it. So I'm here with my beautiful, as always, wonderful, amazing, what else do you like me to say? Sister, Lindsay.
Major overkill
How
today.
you doing, Linz?
I'm good. Yeah, like Sean said, we took a little break. We just, yes, we have busy lives, but I also kind of took a little bit of time to kind of revamp like where we were, what we were talking about, how we can improve things. I've got some good feedback lately. I've got some not so fun feedback lately, and I just wanted to make it better. So here we are.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we are ready to discuss a case that is going to be really fun. And I don't remember the name that you told me, so why don't you introduce her?
So today we're going to talk about the California case of Denise Huskins. So whenever I do research, I try to find things that are interesting, but also really correlate with what we're doing here. So this case is really fascinating. It is out of California, and it happened on March 23rd of 2015. So this case is actually called the Gone Girl kidnapping. Did you see the movie?
I have seen Gone Girl, yeah.
Yeah.
I've never heard of this person in particular.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. Yeah, I'm definitely
It's
excited.
very interesting. Okay, so on March 23rd, 2015, Denise Huskins was kidnapped. Her boyfriend, Aaron Quinn, reported to the police that she was abducted from their California home at gunpoint, and the kidnappers demanded a $8,500 ransom. Huskins reappeared an hour before the ransom was due, 2 days later, and police called the news conference and declared the whole thing a hoax. Said that the couple made it up. Aaron and Denise made it up. I have the direct quote. Let me look right here from Lieutenant Kenny Parks. So this case is actually out of Vallejo. So Lieutenant Kenny Parks with Vallejo Police Department, 2 days after this incident, said, "The fact that we've essentially wasted all of these resources for really nothing is really upsetting. Police weren't even looking for a kidnapper or perpetrator because they didn't even believe a kidnapping had happened." So, joke's on them. A kidnapping did happen.
Yeah.
And that's why I said that it's referred to as the Gone Girl kidnapping, because nobody believed the situation. So, soon after Huskins was abducted, well, let's go before they even abducted her. So, it was actually pretty torturous. So, somebody came into the home. Aaron and Denise actually think there were more than one person, but only one person has been convicted of this crime. So the suspect bound them, placed blackened swim goggles over their eyes, and then monitored their heart rate and blood pressure. It was like some pretty sophisticated stuff that happened.
Yeah, what?
Aaron was then shoved into the closet and drugged with a mixture of NyQuil and Valium. And then he had like headphones on a pre-recorded message, like instructing him how to handle the demands, basically, like the ransom demands. And on the recording, the kidnapper described themselves as a professional group there to collect financial debts. It was really weird, though, too, because, like, they knew, like, Aaron's name. They knew, like, his financial records and where he worked and things like that.
So it was like close to home type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seemed like they, like,
knew something.
Knew about him,
yeah,
obviously.
Yeah. We're going to give a face to the name. I mean, here she is.
There's Denise, yep.
So, I mean, she looks very young.
So Denise actually had to testify against the suspect. And actually that's Aaron behind her. I just realized in the picture too, if you look on the right side. Yeah, that's Aaron right behind her. So she actually did testify against the person that was ultimately sentenced. Well, convicted and sentenced.
Convicted of the crime.
Aaron nor Denise even spoke about this incident until 2018. So it happened in 2015. The police basically told him it was a hoax. And then, I mean, I understand why I wouldn't talk about this situation either if I was, could you imagine being kidnapped and then they tell you that didn't happen?
Yeah, that's
And you know it did.
that's literally, it's like any time that you ever know you're telling the truth and someone's calling you a liar, it's the most frustrating thing.
Yeah.
But this is way beyond that parameter because it's life changing. Like, this is
It's
traumatic. So,
insane. Ultimately, the couple really just hoped that like they were there to steal the TV or take valuables, but it got much worse. So, the attacker demanded like passwords. They wanted to know stuff to the phones, the computers. They had like a stun gun, and so they like flashed it, and they were threatening to like shock them. And they were also threatening to like cut Denise faces if Aaron didn't follow through like on the passwords and things like that. Like I said, he knew his name, information about his finances, and actually where his family lived.
weird. That's very specific. Like,
Yeah, he also forced Denise to drink like a mixture of drugs as well. And then he put Quinn on the living room couch, set up a video camera to monitor him, and outlined a perimeter in tape that he was told like he couldn't go over it. This is where it gets really weird though. So apparently the perpetrator thought that he was going to find someone else. So apparently Aaron had a different fiance prior to Denise.
okay.
And he expected to find
Oh,
that
her.
fiance.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Who actually is very similar. So this fiance too had like long blonde hair, just like Huskins, as you can see in the picture. Huskins has long blonde hair. Nevertheless, the assailant placed Denise in the trunk of Aaron's car and took off. And Aaron, actually when he did the interview in 2018, talked about he struggled to stay awake and then he eventually fell unconscious. He actually woke up the next morning, and he had no idea what to do. He actually had like instructions from the kidnapper to withdraw 2 payments of $8,500, and they were going to be, placed at like undisclosed drop sites. So they were going to call in and tell you what to, I mean, this sounds like so nutty when we talk about it. Like it really does sound like a movie. Like part of me, I guess, can empathize with like where Vallejo police were coming from, but ultimately like it only took 3 short months for them to realize like this had actually happened to them.
Well, you getting like, I never got like how someone could do like a ransom, like a cash drop or something, because there's no way you're getting away with that. Like, there's gonna be so many tracers and or setups.
Oh
and,
gosh,
like,
yes, nowadays, yes.
There's
Yes,
no
yes,
way
yes.
you get away with that. So it's crazy.
It's funny that you say that. So I was listening to a podcast, I think last week, and it was about this guy who was trying to extort money from a casino, but it was literally like in the 80s. And so he didn't get away with it either, but like how elaborate the plan was for the drop site, and they had to have this like big flashing light. It was insane. And I'm like, just the amount of work that it goes into, like, I mean, they sounded like they were pretty sophisticated.
Yeah.
They probably didn't have to kidnap people. They probably just could have committed like, online
Yeah, like theft or like
financial,
credit card theft or something.
identity theft.
And you know what's really,
like, don't kidnap people.
It's really funny because $8,500 in 2018 or 2015 when this happened,
Seriously.
it isn't a lot to get busted for. You know what I mean? Like people rob banks and stuff for like 100 times that. You know what I mean? So that's all right. Let's keep it going. This is crazy already.
I feel like something has to do with like Aaron's ex-fiance.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
But I could not find any other information as to like why he wanted her. And I think ultimately he just ended up taking Denise because she was there. So ultimately, when Aaron woke up the next morning, he called his brother. So his brother was actually an FBI special agent.
Oh, that's convenient.
Oops.
Huh? Yes.
So I'm like, maybe he didn't know that much background information. Maybe he didn't know. I don't know. And maybe he didn't know his brother was an FBI agent. I don't know. But his brother ultimately told him to call the police. And he said he kind of paused because he thought he was killing Denise. Like,
yeah, by calling the police.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like people do have these conflicting, like, conflicting feelings of
Yeah, because you're just
what
like, you
if
want to pay
they told me not to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just want to pay him off and be like, okay, I get him back, whatever. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And just move on with your life. I totally understand that. Like,
Sure. I think a lot of people just want to get it done and over with, right?
depending how your financial situation too. Like, if $8,500 is like, I mean, if this guy makes a lot of money, then 8,500 is like, he's like, oh, okay, I'll write the check. Like, here you go.
Sure. So, during this time, Denise was actually tortured. She was raped. And she reappeared just hours before the ransom was due and was unharmed. And so, like I said, the police called a conference. They basically said there was no evidence or support that anything had happened, although, Aaron and Denise were adamant that this is what happened. Aaron actually talked later about he was initially held for like 18 hours.
Jesus.
But this was after he reported Denise missing. So could you imagine, like, your girlfriend just got kidnapped. You both were drugged. They asked you for all this financial information. And then now you get interrogated for 18 hours. They accused him of killing her. And Huskins allegedly... Okay, so when Huskins returned... She was offered a pro-offer of agreement for immunity and told that Aaron was cooperating with the cops and that whoever accepted first would get immunity. So ultimately, they were, like, trying to pin each other against one another. Like, could you imagine this ordeal? Like, you just come back from being kidnapped.
You have to literally sit through cops questioning you about what happened.
Yes. Yeah. After the Vallejo Police Department publicly dismissed the kidnapping, the San Francisco Chronicle received letters allegedly from Denise kidnappers that they were upset that the couple was not believed. So these letters were like, she was kidnapped, we did it, we'd rather take the chance of revealing the truth than living in a world where someone is victimized again. And again, I say we because, and even Denise and Aaron think there were more than one person, but...
That's a lot of people to keep, like, track of. Does that make sense? Like, if I'm going into a house and there's 3 people, you said, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a lot to keep track of, especially if you're giving one demands, you have to keep track of the other one. You know what I mean? Like, that's...
Sure.
That's sketchy. Obviously, they sound like they planned it out, too.
Yeah. Definitely was saying... Yeah, definitely. In these letters, too, to the newspaper were, like, claims that the writers were part of an Ocean 11 styles group of gentlemen criminals. So, quote, we are young adults, fairly recent college graduates, and up until now, this was a bit like a game or movie adventure. This is what one of the letters read. We fancy ourselves a sort of Ocean 11 gentlemen criminals who only took stuff that was insured from people who could afford it. So I'm like, don't ruin Ocean's 11 for me. I love that movie.
First of all, there's Gone Girl and Ocean's 11. This is literally someone going to a movie theater and like, oh, that sounds cool. Oh, that's really cool too. Let's just put these 2 together.
But part of me is like, oh my God, this is somebody's life. Like, I just feel for her because honestly, like, I couldn't imagine enduring what she did. And then for the police to be like, you made this up. What?
I can't even imagine the fact that the guys who did it were like, hey, like, how are you not believing her? Come on. Like, he's like, dude, like, can you cut her some slack? Like, she got kidnapped. And it's like your kidnapper saying that to them. Mm-hmm. And the cop's not even believing.
When your kidnapper writes in and says you were kidnapped, that's pretty bad. That is
oh my God.
Pretty bad. All right. So the guy on the left, obviously it's Denise on the right. So...
we have a face, huh?
This is the face. So this is ultimately who was convicted of this crime. So 3 months later. So I'm glad it wasn't like 3 years later.
Yeah, 3 months is a long time.
So the case took another turn. And up to this point, Vallejo police were adamant that it was a hoax and they were not going to even do anything about it. So not only are you victimized, you're re-victimized again when the police refuse to even solve this crime.
Yeah.
So in June of 2015, the FBI arrested Mueller. So Matthew Mueller is his name. Okay. He's a 38-year-old Harvard-educated former attorney. He worked actually at Harvard for a few years, and he later became like an immigration lawyer in San Francisco. So he lived in the area. I mean, if you're looking at the Ocean 11 style group of gentlemen criminals, like, he was a college graduate, I mean, he went to Harvard.
Yeah,
Like,
that's what I'm saying. He's went to Harvard and he's robbing people right now. Like, what is this? Like,
and he became a suspect after a similar home invasion was done in Dublin, California. So this couple was awakened by a shining light in their faces. The wife ended up running into the bathroom, calling 911. The husband was able to fight Matthew off, but ultimately Matthew escaped. However, Matthew had left a cell phone on top of a cabinet in the hallway, along with zip ties, duct tape, and a fabric glove. And then ultimately, when they ended up going to Matthew's house, they searched his car. That's where they found Aaron's computer. They found water goggles covered with tape. They found, on the goggles, they found like Denise's blonde hair in it. They found a pair of two-way radios and a water pistol painted black, which is interesting. You know what I find interesting most of all in there? Is a two-way radio.
correct. That's literally my first thing is like, why would you need a radio if you're doing it by yourself?
That makes me think he did not do it by himself.
Oh, there's no way, man.
He was the only one convicted of it. And so...
He's a Harvard graduate. You think that he's taking chances of getting caught? Like, these are like... I don't know, but then again, if he messed up the other time and when he got caught, the second time he went by himself, you know what I mean? Like,
sure. But part of me is like, could you imagine how empowering it probably was that he thought he got away with Denise's kidnapping? And so, because he made a huge mistake. I mean, I said he left his phone on top of a cabinet.
He left everything.
But again, he did not anticipate it going down the way that it did, where the wife ran, the husband fought him off, Yeah. But you probably should have had your stuff on you.
And that's only two people. Think about that. Mm-hmm. Like, that's two people, like, just
so
totally owned you immediately.
If he did have somebody else with him at the second time, where were they?
And you said that Aaron and Denise were on heart monitors. And,
yeah,
like,
it was crazy
those
stuff.
Are extensive. Like, that's not one of those things where you're doing it, like, by yourself. You think one nurse takes care of one person at a time. You know what I mean? Like, that's crazy.
Crazy. So once he was in custody, Matthew ended up telling police that he was a Marine for 4 years. He attended Harvard for 3 years. He then taught there for another 3 years. He ultimately said he suffered from Gulf War illness, and in 2008 was diagnosed with bipolar. So he ultimately pled guilty to Denise's kidnapping. He ultimately then and that's, like I said, he testified at the hearing. Initially they did not speak to anybody. They wouldn't do any interviews or things like that. She did go and testify. They actually both testified at Mueller's trial. And then they were like silent for years. Mueller did receive 40 years in federal prison. And so because it involved like kidnapping for ransom and different things like that, he ended up being charged federally.
So it's like big, yeah, because that's like a big boy crime. Like, yeah.
Yeah. And so he actually was sentenced and then in federal court, and Aaron and Denise both spoke about like their ordeal. Denise during the situation, she thought she was going to die. Like, she had made peace with it. And then when the kidnapper had dropped her off, he dropped her off near her dad's house. And so, which was in a different city, which is weird too. Like, I feel like this guy really researched them and had like extensive insider information about the two of them.
But I mean, if you're gonna do a home robbery as extensive as this, I guess you kind of have to. Like, it's just insane.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine sitting there thinking that you're gonna die the entire time.
And then you get let out, like, just like and he's like, all right, get out. See ya. There you go.
See ya.
Hope you give me 5-star on Uber. Like, thank you.
Oh my gosh, I'm done with you. In March of 2016, so about a year after the incident, about 7 months after Mueller was caught, or 9 months after Mueller was caught, Aaron Denise filed a suit, of course, against Vallejo Police Department, accusing the department of defamation, false arrest, and false imprisonment.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
intentionally inflicting of emotional distress. And yes, I agree to all of the above.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
I guarantee you, as soon as Mueller was arrested, Vallejo was like,
Oh, no.
crap.
Yeah, they're like, oh, no, like...
So I had read conflicting stories, but apparently Vallejo Police Department privately apologized, never publicly apologized, basically saying that they couldn't because of the court, like the civil suit. And so they essentially, Vallejo police kind of even just continued, like, given that they said that Denise inconveniently showed up alive, that they transitioned into a hoax story, basically to avoid criticism. And then they did end up apologizing in the summer of 2015, and they were initially skeptical because they didn't believe Aaron's version of events, including that he had been drugged by the intruders. So they just found it really odd. Like, he didn't call till the next morning, so they find it odd, which...
I mean, even if you find it odd, shouldn't you take every call that you get serious, though? Like, right away? Like, I'm not gonna immediately be like, oh, we found her, now obviously it didn't happen. Like, that's not my first thing. Like, my first thing is, like, are you okay? Like,
Yeah.
how are you here? Like, you know what I mean?
I mean, I think about it, too. Like, obviously, she was brought to another city, so that's one thing. But it appears like rather than looking for her, they spent essentially the 2 days that she was gone interrogating Aaron, which, how would you feel if you're both of them? You know what I mean?
Dude,
like,
if I was getting interrogated for my fiance that just got kidnapped and I'm getting interrogated, like, where is she?
I'm getting in
like,
trouble
dude,
because you're not interrogating anything.
Yes, like,
you're letting me the hell out of this room.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like, I don't know. That's really
so
hard. That's
I'm
really
like,
hard.
The story is so crazy, and it's such a gap in justice because honestly, I just couldn't imagine. Like, I feel like lately we've had a few cases where we're harping a little bit on the police. However, this is a major story that they definitely brought it on themselves.
For sure. Yeah.
You can't just say somebody's not telling the truth because, it seemed like she was gone 2 days, and then they did this press conference on the day she was released.
Yeah.
Give it some time. Like, you can't even, if you do like this investigation and then you find out that there's no evidence, that's one thing.
Yeah, correct.
But they literally same day were like, nope, this is a hoax. I can't believe we wasted our time. Like, some of the stuff that came out of their mouth was just
you gotta
rude.
You gotta be professional in a situation like this. Like, you have to, weirder things have happened. Like, this isn't one of those things that the weirdest things can happen. Like, literally anything can happen. So you can't really write off somebody just because your opinion is that, oh, these are way too weird to actually happen. They're gonna have to be lying about it. Like, it's just crazy. The mental trauma that these two had to go through, which should have been avoided, which makes me really mad. You know what I mean? The anxiety, you're gonna have a lifetime of, just anxiety about this. Like, you have an anxiety about someone breaking into your house. You know what I mean? Like, once someone breaks into your house or something, I highly doubt that you ever feel safe in your own home.
Sure, you're never going to feel secure again.
Yeah, which is your spot to feel the safest you possibly can. You know what I mean? So I just feel really bad for him, so.
Well, and I think a huge part to talk about, too, is in our society today, like, social media is huge, and Denise had actually talked about, like, continued accusations online that she faked her own abduction, and people are mean. Like, people are really cruel. Could you imagine the amount of stuff that she went through?
Well, yeah, you have to think about someone in real life and you talking to someone face to face. They become 100% more, ballsy online. You know what I mean? So the things that could be a I don't believe you turn into something way harsher and way meaner because it's the internet, and it's really hard to be, even like athletes nowadays. They have to go through. I mean, being an athlete in the '80s where you didn't get blasted online was hard enough as it is. But nowadays you get blasted online if you do something wrong. So I can't even
be
imagine
somebody
like,
super famous because I would get in trouble. I would be like
yeah.
so offended about everything.
That's so true. Yeah.
Ultimately, the city attorneys tried to argue that the police statements after the kidnapping are protected under the First Amendment, and that the other two claims should be dismissed for lack of evidence. So there were two specific officers that were named in the suit. So one was that Lieutenant Kenny. He's the one who said, like, we waste our time.
Yeah.
They're trying to say that they were protected by absolute immunity under state law. Ultimately, did not happen. 2 years later, so I'm sad that it took 2 years for them to settle, but 2 years later, they ultimately settled for $2.5 million with Vallejo Police Department.
Dang, Mueller should have waited, you know? He asked for $8,500.
Well, they didn't have the money before, Sean.
That's crazy. Like, that's so... I mean, jokes aside, it's really sad that people have to wait a long time to... I mean, you have to live
some
it.
Justice?
Yes, because you have to you're still living it when you're in a court case. You know what I mean? Like, you're still in it. Like, you can't take your mind off it until the court case is over because people are fighting against you saying, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong.
But there's the other piece, too, of, like, I don't know if I would be able to go back to work. And so now they have to wait 2 years for this settlement, but... Who's to say Denise could even work? Who's to say that they didn't have all these bills? Who's to say that they didn't have online scrutiny and that she didn't want to leave the house? I mean, there's so much that goes into it, and it takes so much to fight. And, like, Vallejo Police Department, you were wrong. Own up to it. You know, let's not argue under First Amendment or this or that or whatever. You essentially told them you were not going to, that it was a hoax, that you were not going to look into it. And that's just sad. That's sad. That's horrible.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's not fair. So that's crazy.
There's another. This is like the one picture of Mueller, like this lovely mugshot of him.
Yeah, they really
that
don't
they
get a
had
lot of them,
everywhere. No. And then I just found kind of this cool little picture of Vallejo, California. So I'm gonna quiz you real quick, Sean. I know you're newer to true crime, so
It looks really nice.
It is, yeah. I mean, it
looks like San Francisco, like hilly, very hilly for you guys who don't know. Like, it's just very nice.
Yeah. So I'm going to quiz you right now on your true crime. You ready?
Oh, sick. Awesome.
What other famous case, true crime, comes out of Vallejo, California?
Oh, dude, I don't know.
Come on.
Is it like a murderer?
Yes.
Okay, it's the one murderer that wore the glasses. What's his name? He had wore sunglasses all the time in his pictures. I don't remember it.
What?
Is he a Hispanic gentleman?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Who is it? Just tell me.
The Zodiac Killer.
Oh, okay. I would. That's
so
not
we don't even know who it is because the Zodiac case is not solved. But
that's not who I was thinking of.
So Zodiac Killer was active in the 1960s. The case was ultimately never solved. Do you know that the Vallejo Police Department actually opened up the Zodiac Killer would send cryptic messages, and
yeah, he's the one who used to cut out the newspaper clipping or the newspaper letters and
they would do letters.
Paper?
Yeah, well,
he
he would put stuff in the newspaper as well, but the police actually opened it up to everyday citizens to see if they could crack his code.
Oh yeah,
because they just couldn't do it.
Yeah,
it was
that's
crazy. Yeah, it was. He has never been captured. This case actually became inactive in 2004. It was reopened again in 2007. And the Vallejo website has a menu tab that you can provide Zodiac tips. But I've listened to so many podcasts on the Zodiac, and honestly, I don't think the Zodiac is going to be caught. You know, I mean, I think there are some other...
In the 60s, he could be
he could definitely be dead.
He's definitely well past if he's
I think he
60s.
probably is.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it would still bring people closure if you know how they do all those DNA things nowadays. I think could still bring some closure if people could at least know who it was.
I'll tell you right now, if I'm the Zodiac killer and I got away with it for how many years, on my deathbed, I'm dropping it.
But how do
Like,
you know you're dying?
that's sometimes. I mean, it's got to be certain situations. You gotta be. You gotta be. You gotta
It's
be
my
really
deathbed,
ready.
and then you live.
You
Oh
gotta,
no!
You're like,
Whoops!
I mean, at that point, you gotta be like a certain age, and like you're okay with dying already, and it's not a big deal. So I mean,
Oh gosh.
that's crazy, man. Like this town, you'd think after the Zodiac, them like being, oh, I can't catch the Zodiac killer, you'd think you'd believe everything, but
Yeah, definitely.
that's rough. So is that all you got for me today?
That's all I got.
All right, well that is.
I mean, do you need more? That was
No,
pretty intense.
yeah, it was. I mean, to be fair, basing this story off of pretty much 2 movies.
Yes.
According
You know what's
to
funny too is actually the next podcast that I researched is also kind of loosely based on a movie.
Oh, nice movie podcast.
I don't know why.
Well, I mean, I'm happy that Denise and Aaron got some closure.
Yep.
I'm really sorry that they had to
Endure that.
endure it for a long time and endure the 2 years of fighting for the money they rightfully deserved for going through so much trauma.
I hope they're just healing now and being able to move forward.
Yeah, 100%. So, all right. Well, if you don't have anything else to say, I'm going to close it right there. And this has been A Gap in Justice. We love you guys. We're going to record some more for you guys, and we will be back with you next week, hopefully. So, bye, guys. Love you.